Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is also important to see is that just to build on from the previous workshop, we were talking about how stories are important when we're thinking about campaigns.
Yeah.
And if we are sharing our own stories, or if we are sharing other people's stories as a part of our campaign, it's all the
Yeah.
more important that we ensure that the campaign and the way we're thinking around the campaign is safe, right?
Yeah.
And the final session of the webinar series is on digital safety, but it is more than just a technical safety of it, but
Yeah.
also in how are we designing the campaign itself,
Yeah.
right? This means that, as queer and trans persons, if we're asking for stories from others, then
Yes.
are we ensuring that there is complete and utter and meaningful consent from them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm emphasizing on this is that, as a part of my one of my work, when we were doing a campaign, there was someone who had completely agreed to have their story shared without their
Yeah.
name and face, and we made the video. All the shooting has happened and all of that. But on the day and they consented, they checked their story in multiple stages. In the shooting stage, during the editing, all of that. But only on the day when we launched it, we put out their story, did they realize that they still were worried about their identity being revealed. So they first asked my organization and me to like take down the, unlist the video first and then take it down. And we, of course, did that because at this point, consent forms don't matter as much as what the person needs in
Yeah.
that moment. But more importantly, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because when we're designing campaigns and if we're asking for participatory campaigns, we need to ensure that, the people who are trusting and sharing with us can also come back to us and tell that, what,
Yeah.
right now, I don't want it up there. Could you take
Yeah.
it down?
Yeah.
Right? And Indu, I think like you would be more well placed because you use personal stories so much in your work,
Yeah.
um, and the amount of trust that people put in you to share the kind of things that they share with you
Yeah.
is quite indicative of that, I would say. So yeah, maybe you could share a little more about that from your
Okay.
own experience as well.
Yeah. So, like you shared, Smita, I've also had, where whenever, okay, so I did one project where I asked people to share their experiences, share pictures of their breasts. Uh, if we could share that screenshot, I like to share what I put out. So in most of the campaigns that I do, I also try to keep it as open-ended so that people interpret it the way they want, but there's also a certain structure to it. No, there was a screenshot. If there was a screenshot of uh, the one that I sent you last. Sorry. People were also sharing extremely intimate pictures. One of the things that I put out saying that please do not share anything that you're uncomfortable sharing. And even at every point when it went online, I did check with people if they were okay. There were times when people have come back and said, look, I was okay with it, but can you take off my tattoo? I don't want to be recognized. Or right now I feel scared. So these were all things that will come up when you do campaigns with people's stories, and you have to then make sure that people who are sharing also feel safe doing that, because you don't want to make at no point, even if it's a powerful story, it should not be at the cost of someone's safety. There are several things. Yeah, you want to ask me something else, Smita, before I completely digress?
No, no, I think this is very important. I personally find it very essential that we talk about this because, a lot of times I think all of us as advocates and activists and people working in the sector kind of need a small reminder that our movements are made up of people. And without the
Yeah,
people, there is no movement. And so there is no big, because this discourse of bigger cause keeps coming up. But what is the bigger cause if you don't think about the people who make up the cause, right? And make up the movement. So I think what you're sharing is very, very essential and powerful here.
Yeah. So, like in this case, there were, there were people who were at one point ready to share their story, had shared nudes, and at some point were also feeling very scared. They didn't want, even if their faces were not up there, they didn't want their stories to be up there after a point, after they'd shared and after they'd thought about it. And as I think these are things that one has to consider when working with people, because so this is one. I mean, also in when I put out. Like when I put out a structure like this, I people always write back to me. I always, if there are questions, there are queries, people are worried about certain things, they always write back to me. And I think it's also very important to let people know how, if there is this kind of a campaign, to let people know how their data is going to be used. Now, I may, like if I am working with another non-profit, and someone's trusting me with something personal, they may not trust the non-profit with the same thing. So, this is something that I assure, that if you are telling me your story, you're telling and you're allowing me to share it. You're not allowing anyone else to share it. So these are all things that are extremely important when you build a campaign, so that people who share are also feel safe. They may not feel safe sharing it with they may be okay sharing it, like, okay, if I can bring in I've also worked with corporates, so where if I could bring in Tinder, so where I worked with Tinder, where I where it was clear that whatever stories people were sharing with me, none of their personal information goes to anyone else. It only comes to me. So these are all important things to take care when you do any kind of campaign. Yeah. You have any
Just to
questions?
Yeah, just to add on what Indu was saying, in the digital space, data is also so many levels of data, right? So it's one of the things that we can also think about is when we're designing the campaign, if there is something like a survey element or like things which involve input from the participants and our audience, it's also to consciously think about why are we collecting certain information? Are we collecting it out of habit, or do we really need certain sorts of information? No, like for example, a lot of the forms by default have age, or by default have things like gender mentioned in that.
Yeah.
Now, as per our campaign, is it really needed? Or are we collecting it because the habit is that we collect it? It's like, no, in India, in wherever pharmacy or grocery shop and supermarket you go, um, they will randomly ask for your phone number. And by habit, people give the phone number, right? But why are they asking for the phone number? Do we want to give it? Is another question. Are there any other questions from the participants? Anyone wants to ask any question to Indu on this, or wants to share something on this? You can just unmute and speak as well. Or was this like, it was, okay, nope, several nopes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, that's perfect.
sorry?
Yeah, should I also like okay, one other thing that I do is that a lot of my campaigns also come from an extremely personal space. So I share a lot of extremely personal information online through my stories. Uh, and so I recently did a campaign which was on abortion, and one of the first stories that I put out was my own story, which when I had an abortion, it was not something that I could talk about. But through art and through this campaign, I could talk about what I felt. And I called for other people's experiences. I mean, it's just, I feel safe right now to be vulnerable and vulnerable to a certain degree, and not, and it's taken me several years to come here. But often I've also seen that when people start to share stories, it enables, it becomes okay for a whole lot of people to have had similar experiences, but no place to talk about.